3.8 is almost here, and today I'm here with the full updated 3.8 guide for one of the characters in the Phase 3 half, this time for Sunday. In this video, I'm taking you over his kit and eidolons, best Lightcones, best relic sets and platinum ornaments, the stats you want to run for main stat and also substat goals, and also a bit of help when it comes to speed tuning, and then some team building ideas. Sunday's basic attack will deal damage based off his attack to a designated enemy. His skill will enable an ally and their summon to immediately take action and increase their damage dealt by 30%. If the target you buffed has a summon, the damage dealt increase is further boosted by an additional 50% for 2 turns. If you use your skill on the Beatified, recovers a skill point. When Sunday will use his skill on a character that is on the path of harmony, the immediate action effect does not trigger. His ultimate will regenerate energy by 20% of the max energy for a designated ally character and will turn the target and their summon into the Beatified. Beatified have their crit damage increased by an amount equal to 30% of Sunday's crit damage plus 12%. Beatified's buff duration will decrease by 1 at the start of Sunday's every turn that lasts for 3 turns. The Beatified effect will only take place on the most recent target, excluding Sunday himself, and if Sunday gets knocked down, the Beatified will also be dispelled. Sunday's talent will increase crit rate for the character you do buff with the skill by 20% for 3 turns. His technique will increase the target's damage dealt by 50% for 2 turns for the character that you do use skill for the first time in the next battle. His A2, when using ultimate, if the energy regenerated for the target is less than 40, it will regenerate their energy to 40. His A4, when the battle starts, Sunday will generate 25 energy, and his A6, when using skill, will dispel a debuff from the target. For his eidolons, his E1, when Sunday uses skill, the target character can ignore 16% of the enemy target's defense to deal damage, and their summon can ignore 40% of the enemy target's defense to deal damage for 2 turns. His E2, after the first use of ultimate, will recover 2 skill points, and the damage dealt by the Beatified increases by 30%. His E4, when the turn starts, regenerates 8 energy, and his E6, the talent's crit rate boost effect becomes stackable to 3 times, and the talent's duration will increase by 1. When Sunday uses ultimate, can also apply the talent's crit rate boost effect to the target. When the talent's crit rate boost takes effect and the target's crit rate exceeds 100%, for every 1% of excess crit rate increases crit damage by 2%. To sum up the E6, pretty much now you can actually give the talent effect from ultimate as well, so it's no longer exclusive to skill. The talent stacks up to 3 times, meaning you can get up to 60% crit rate, and every 1% crit rate above 100% is going to be converted at a 1-2 ratio, so every 1% crit rate will be 2% crit damage. 102% crit rate would mean an extra 4% crit damage you are gaining, 103 is extra 6%, and so on and so forth. For best Lightcone options, his best one is still his own signature Lightcone, which after the wearer uses skill or ultimate on an allied character, the wearer will regenerate 6 energy and the ability's target receives a stack of him. For 3 turns, this stacks up to 3 times, and each stack will increase its holder's damage by 15%, and after every 2 instances of skill or ultimate the wearer uses on one allied character, recovers a skill point. So this Lightcone very much comfortably helps you get uptime on his ultimate to keep it up practically always. So whoever you're buffing to turn into the Beatified will always have the Beatified buff up. There's not going to be any RNG related to it, as the extra energy is very helpful. It also gives extra buffing capabilities, allowing up to an increase of damage dealt to 45%, which is pretty good. But one of the main selling points of this Lightcone is it makes Sunday a lot more comfy to play because it turns him from SP neutral to SP positive. So with this Lightcone, Sunday will be able to regenerate more skill points, turning him into a somewhat SP generator. So if you have an SP negative DPS, it's very helpful there. He isn't able to fully offset someone who consumes a lot, such as someone like Archer, but it definitely does help. So this Lightcone provides great uptime for his ultimate, providing extra energy, up to a 45% increase in damage dealt for the character you are buffing, which is good, and also turns him into an SP positive character, making it his best in slot option. Another option you can use is But the Battle Isn't Over, which increases the wearer's energy regen by 10% and regenerates 1 skill point when the wearer uses their ultimate on an ally for every 2 uses of wearer's ultimate. When the wearer uses their skill, the next ally taking action except the wearer will deal 30% more damage for 1 turn. Extra energy regen is good. That means you're going to be able to cover more energy to try to keep uptime on his ultimate. And now every 2 times you do use your ultimate, you will be able to regenerate a skill point. It's not as good as the signature, of course, since the signature lets you get it very frequently. but it still is a form of skill point generation. So the first time you use your ultimate, you get a skill point back, the second time you won't, the third time you will, so on and so forth. And Sunday's skill is giving the character you do buff, assuming they are not Harmony, a extra turn, so their next attack would be dealing 30% more damage for a turn, so you're able to utilize the last part of this Lightcone completely well, which makes it another really good option to use. Another Lightcone you can use is Dance Dance Dance, which when the wearer uses their ultimate, all allies' actions are advanced forward by 16%, and at S5, it is 24%. So now anytime Sunday uses his ultimate, like it says, everyone's actions will be advanced by 24%, allowing you to act quicker or potentially reaching a breakpoint to let you achieve another turn within a cycle where you normally wouldn't. When you are running this Lightcone, as I always do vouch for anything Eagle related or Dance 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 related, be sure you're actually getting some form of benefit out of it. It doesn't have to be achieving another turn in a cycle. It can be something as simple as acting quicker, just so you can end up getting an action where you normally wouldn't before an enemy attacks you, which would potentially end up dealing fatal damage and letting you die. If it makes you act before then and you are able to act quick enough to get an attack which potentially could kill an enemy or delay their attack, then it does become worth it. But if you're just running this and it doesn't let you get a turn quicker, it doesn't give you an extra turn within a cycle, then you would be better off running something else. So be sure you're hitting a threshold where it does make it matter, or at least act before an enemy attacks to make it matter. And in those cases, it can actually be one of the best options to use. Another option is Past and Future, which when the wearer uses their skill, the next ally taking action except the wearer deals 16% increased damage for one turn, and at S5 it is a 32% increased damage. So it's kind of just like the battle isn't over Lightcone, but just somewhat worse. At S5, it's 2% more for the last part, but it doesn't provide the extra skill point or the extra energy regen. And as I mentioned with But the Battle Isn't Over, you're going to be able to give another turn to the person you are buffing after using skill anyways, so they will get a free 32% increased damage for that turn, which is why it is a usable option on Sunday. If you are pairing Sunday with another imaginary DPS such as IL Danheng or Maide, you can use Planetary Rendezvous, which after entering battle, if an ally deals the same damage type as the wearer, damage dealt increases by 12%, and at S5 it is 24%. So of course the only requirement is for them to be imaginary, and if they're not, then this Lightcone just becomes some extra stats, and it's not even going to be that much to make it worth it, and it's not like you need the base stats anyways. So if you have none of the other options that I mentioned, and you are pairing him alongside IL Danheng or Maide especially, you can use Planetary Rendezvous for the extra 24% damage increase, and if they're not imaginary, then this Lightcone is effectively useless and you would not bother. For Relic sets, overall, running 4-piece Relieved Ordeal is going to still be the most common, with the 2-piece providing 6% speed, and the 4-piece when using skill or ultimate on one ally target, increases the target's crit damage by 18% for 2 turns and stacks up to 2 times. 6% speed from the 2-piece makes them easier to build, whether you're going for a -1 build or a hyperspeed build regardless. And then the 4-piece can give you up to a 36% increase to crit damage, which is really good since he also is a crit damage amplifier anyways. So this can technically make you focus less on crit damage and maybe focus more on speed and such, since it's providing you a lot of crit damage. Sunday can also stack this up right away because when you go into battle, you skill and ult the character you are trying to buff right away nearly, so unless you're doing a setup where you need to action advance someone else, or ult someone else for energy, you can stack this up right away. And even if you are doing one of those other setups, you can still very much correct it right after. So it's a set that Sunday utilizes very well and also is really good effects on the characters he is buffing, which is why it is one of the most common options and usually the best option to use. Another option is 4-piece Hackerspace, which is the same 2-piece providing 6% speed. 4-piece when the wearer uses their ultimate on an ally, it will increase speed for all allies by 12% for one turn and cannot be stacked. So the 4-piece for this is just extra speed for everyone, just like I mentioned with Dance 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 or any form of action advance that I will have a disclaimer with. If you're getting an extra turn or at least acting quicker and it helps you hit speed thresholds, then it's going to be worth it, otherwise you're better off running Relieved Ordeal. And another thing to note is be sure you aren't running specific speed tunings. Let's say you're running a character that has a higher base speed than Sunday, but let's say you're running a character that has a lower base speed than Sunday, but you have a -1 setup that's very, very marginal, so like a few decimals apart. Speed percentage buffs will work on base speed, and if Sunday has a higher base speed than them, the speed buffs can end up making Sunday be faster, so if it's marginal, it can be a bit of a bad case to be dealing with. So be sure this is also not messing up with any of your speed tunings that already exist. But if it isn't, and it's also helping you get a quicker turn or another turn and helping you hit higher speed thresholds, then Hackerspace is a really good option. If you want to just get as much speed as possible, you can run 2-piece speed, so Warrior Goddess with Relieved Ordeal or one of those with Hackerspace. That's only if you're just trying to get hyper speed for some reason and you can't with the 4-piece, or you just want to get as much speed as possible. The last set I want to talk about is the Eagle set. For the 4-piece, after the wearer uses ultimate, their action is advanced forward by 25%. This is usually only going to be a set that you use when you are running a slower DPS and you want Sunday to just get as many actions as possible, such as achieving 3 turns within the first MLC cycle and so on. An example I'm going to use is the E1 to E3 Aglia, where you run her base speed, and in short, you would want to build as much speed as possible above 160 on Sunday, and you'd also want to run Eagle set. The whole point is just building as much speed as possible and also getting the effect of the 4-piece. When you're running a -1 setup, you wouldn't want to run this at all, just because once you use your ultimate, you're going to go above the DPS you're trying to have the -1 setup anyways. So again, this is either only for base speed characters or someone like Aglia who gains a bunch of speed at base speed anyways, and you still just want Sunday to get as much turns as possible. So if you're trying to achieve getting a bunch of turns within a cycle or more than you normally would, Eagle would be the set you would want to run. For planet ornaments, you can really run any of the supportive sets on him. Lushaka is the most common with 5% energy regen rate and 12% attack for the character position first. If you are running him alongside another imaginary DPS that is the main DPS, you can use Pentaconi, which does provide 5% energy regen rate as well, and 10% damage for everyone that is the same type as the wearer, so in this case, imaginary. You can also run something like Broken Keel on him as well, which gives 10% effect res, and reaching 30% or higher effect res gives everyone 10% crit damage. So as long as they do benefit from crit damage, this can be a usable set, albeit a bit outdated, and also ageless, which does provide 12% max HP, which is good for survivability. 120 speed or higher, which you practically always will have, will give everyone 8% attack, so as long as they benefit from attack, you can use this set as well. In specific cases where you have to have Sunday act really quickly, or you're trying to hit, once again, specific thresholds that can allow Sunday to get another action within a cycle, specifically the first cycle, Von Walk can also work. With 5% energy regen rate, and when the wearer reaches 120 speed or higher, the wearer's action is advanced forward by 40% immediately upon entering battle. So running a higher speed Sunday with Von Walk would practically guarantee the fact that he would be the first one to act, so you can get your buffs right away, and also can potentially achieve another turn. So if you're going for setups like that, where it's just as bunch of speeds as possible, along with Eagle set, maybe even Dance Dance Dance, you can also run Von Walk on top of that to make your goals easier. For the main stats on the Relics, for the body, you want to run crit damage always so you can amplify his buff. For the feet, you want to run speed. For the orb, you run HP % or defense % for survivability, and for the link rope, you run energy regen rate. For the substats, your biggest goal first is going to be your speed tuning priority. If you are speed tuning for a -1 setup, the thing you would need to do is, of course, to get your Sunday to be about 1 to 3 speeds slower than your DPS. So let's say if you are pairing him with someone like Maide and your Maide speed is 142, you would need to get Sunday speed to 141 to maybe even 139 or 140. It doesn't exactly have to be a -1 setup. It can be 2 to 3 speed lower. You just want to make sure to get it as close as possible while being below the speed. So the way it would work is Maide would act, Sunday would act right after, which would pull Maide all the way back up to get another turn and attack again. On the flip side, if you are pairing him with a base speed DPS such as someone like Yunli, where you don't really build any speed on them, the goal for this would be building your Sunday to hyperspeed, so then your goal would be 160.1 speed or higher. That would ensure you reaching the hyperspeed threshold. And then if you're running a Eagle speed setup and you're trying to get as much speed as possible, in that case, you really just go for as much speed as possible. It would of course change on how many dances you are running on the team, if you have Von Walk on your Sunday, if you also have Eagle on him. But in most of those cases, you would just mainly run as much speed as possible. So again, if you're running -1 setup for your DPS, you just need to get to 1 to 3 speed lower than your DPS. If you're running a base speed DPS with a hyperspeed Sunday, it would be 160.1 or higher. And if you're running a Eagle speed setup with just as much speed and trying to get as many actions as possible, in that case, just get as much as you can. Past that would be focusing on more crit damage just to further amplify his buff. If you are running Broken Keel, be sure to reach 30% effect res as well so you get the actual effect. And also getting some HP %, defense %, and effect res for survivability is going to be nice just so your Sunday doesn't die. So once again, first step is your speed tuning, second up would be more crit damage and or your effect res if you are running Broken Keel. Keep in mind Sunday does get 18% effect res in his traces, plus the 10% for Broken Keel, so you literally only need one roll. But yeah, more crit damage in a case for that. Reaching 200% or higher would be ideal, and that's if you're running a Lightcone that doesn't provide any crit damage, which would be most of his options that I did mention. So 200% or higher would be your general goal, and then past that, survivability stats. And then for team building ideas, as Sunday is a support, there are a lot of teams you can actually use them on. Anytime there's a DPS that has a team where they want to run a -1 support, Sunday is usually going to be the most common option. And for an example, that's going to be primarily the team that we see now, especially because he's about to rerun with her. I'm going to use Aglia as an example here. So Sunday and Aglia. Third slot would go to another support. Usually nowadays it would be someone like Cyrene. But if you have Chibi, Robin, or so on, you can also put them there. Last slot would go to your sustain, and the best sustain for Aglia is actually going to be the new Danheng. So you would run the new Danheng here for the sustain slot. Something to note is that Danheng is actually able to enable the summon part of Sunday's kit. If you guys remember, he is able to provide further damage and even more defense ignore from his E1 for the summon. Danheng is actually able to activate that on characters that do not have a summon. So for an example, I'm going to use Anaxa here. So a -1 Anaxa setup would look like something like this. Sunday, Anaxa, the new Danheng. Last slot would go to usually someone like Ceredra here. Danheng is able to attach his summon to Anaxa, which would further amplify the damage out that Sunday can provide from his skill, since it's now considered that Anaxa has a summon. So Danheng is the best sustain that could synergize on Sunday teams. So for an Anaxa -1 setup, it would look like this. If you're running Finon, you would just replace Anaxa with Finon. And if you're running Sustainless, obviously the last slot instead of the Sustain would go to another support, be it Robin, be it Cyrene if they're a Crisis Heir, be it even RMC, be it even Tribi as a great slot-in, or even someone like Cypher. Really, just in any -1 team setup, Sunday would be going there. Aglia, Sunday will always be on that team as well. And that's kind of where you'd want to use them. And that does wrap up the full 3.8 updated guide for Sunday. I do hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, dropping a like would be greatly appreciated. If you're new to the channel or haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to the blog for future videos like this, along with all other types of style content. Check the description to join the Discord server and check out my archives channel, and I'll see you later. Peace out.